Here's to whiskey kisses, the peaty taste of sin.
Greetings, whiskey folk, and welcome back to Drinking Out Loud, where today we are taking a look at the old and the new, I guess. The original Spirit of the Deep from Devine, and the brand new Spirit of the Deep, the first ever whiskey from Driftwood. Very exciting local pair of whiskies with a really interesting story. If you haven't come across Spirit of the Deep before, it's it's a cool concept. And it's really neat that we get to continue it on. So Devine, unfortunately, have closed their doors as of earlier this year. So there's no more whiskey to be made at Devine. And if you want more information on that, then we've got a whole video about it when we launched our final ever casks from Devine, one of which is still available in store. But the other part of that equation, of course, was Devine was the makers of the Spirit of the Deep, a custom whiskey spirit that was made for the Fathom bar at the Hotel Grand Pacific that I helped to create, and I'm really proud of. It was an excellent program. We did apparently 7 batches, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it was super successful. The cocktail program at Fathom is incredible, led by Soren. And it was just a really fun program. So before we get into the, I know, very exciting brand new one, let's take a little trip down memory lane and crack open a bottle of the 7th and final Spirit of the Deep batch from Devine. So we wanted a whiskey that would work really well. I miss Devine, but I'm not going to miss Devine's packaging. It never seems to work for me. I'll try and struggle through as I explain. So we tried to create a Spirit with Devine that would stand up to the cocktail program at Fathom. They wanted something specifically for an old-fashioned, so they wanted big, bold flavors, but they wanted something that was unique enough that they could build a whole program around it. And that's kind of what we aimed for. And the concept that we came up with at the time, and this was couple of years ago now, was to take their ancient grain spirit, which is where they have a young, about a year, just over a year old whiskey spirit, so not a whiskey yet because it's less than 3 years old, and it's made with barley, yes, but also einkorn, emmer, spelt, and coruscant, which was all blended together and put into a tiny little sort of quarter barrel to mature a little bit quicker, hence the ridiculous colour on this thing. But then we finished it in their Black Bear, which is their sort of spiced rum style spirit made with honey. And that added so much intrigue and interest. It made a big, deep, dark flavour profile, lots of baking spices, and that is what we aimed for, and that is what we got. All right. Oh, yeah. It's kind of sad that that's probably the last bottle of Fathom's Devine Spirit of the Deep that I'll ever open, but things are beautiful in life because they are fleeting, right? Always got to remember that. Oh yeah, it's got that beautiful, deep, rich vanilla clove thing that we were aiming for. I've not actually had batch 7. This is my first time trying the 7th batch. From the other batches that I have tried, the consistency was absolutely there. They nailed it. I was, involved in the original creation of this, but then Kevin at Devine was very, and still is, he still works in the industry, is with another local distillery now. I'm not entirely sure I'm allowed. No, I'm fairly sure it's public knowledge. He's with Fermentorium now. He is very good at making a consistent flavor profile. He's very on it on checking the cask every couple of days or every day or every week, when depending how close we are to the finish line, to make sure that it's the right amount of finishing cask. And yeah, the consistency at Devine was always one of the things they were excellent at. So I wasn't really worried about the batches having too much variation. Yeah, it's lovely. It's got a little sort of licoricey darkness to the back end. Yeah. So we had a few bottles of these Spirit of the Deeps that we released. We released a few in store when it launched, and then for a couple of years in a row, we released a few bottles available at the pop-up store at the Whiskey Festival. And that's literally the only time you could ever get it. So only probably 50 or 60 people have ever been able to take a bottle of this home. It was made specifically for the bar program at Fathom, which makes it probably one of the rarest local spirits you could have. So if you did manage to pick up a Spirit of the Deep from Devine in the past, congratulations. Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, one of the fun things about it as well, the artwork. The illustration was done for the menus, the cocktail menu at Fathom, by a friend of Soren's, and then they worked together with the printer artist who did the lino cut printing for all of the Devine releases to sort of integrate that design in with the classic Devine. So it's really cool that we had a really custom artwork on this. Yeah, and it's also kind of fun that it was bottled at a specific strength of 46.3 because 463 is the address of the Hotel Grand Pacific. So that's a kind of neat little nod. Yeah, there's a little quote on there as well. The deeper down into the sea, the more interesting things get. Ain't that true? So that was a very successful program. Like I said, we did 7 whole casks, small casks, but whole small casks of it throughout the couple of years it was been available at Fathom, and I couldn't be prouder of it. However, I have to say, I am really excited at the next chapter as well. So Driftwood, absolutely incredible local brewery, and if you've not had a Fat Tug, then you've probably never stepped foot in Victoria, because it's hard to get out of this city without having someone give you a Fat Tug. That sounds really suggestive, isn't it? It's an IPA. It's an incredible IPA that Driftwood are very much known for. But they have a whole suite of other beers and now spirits that they're also known for. The spirit program at Driftwood has been absolutely incredible in the last couple of years, and I've been proud to support them not only in the store but at our Island Craft festivals here at the Strath as well. Their gins, the Parabola and the Contact, both awesome. They do an oyster spirit for Chuck Taylor's Oyster Bar, which is literally like they crush oysters up and put it in a gin basket and distill the spirit through the oysters. It's wild. And a whole bunch of other things. We've just got the limoncello in store as well. So I've known that they've had whiskey laid down for quite a while. Ever since I had a great chat with their former master distiller, Brennan Cook, who actually worked with Rachel Barry. And if that name sounds familiar to you, if you're a whiskey fan, it should, because she is the master blender over at Glenglassaugh, Benriach, and Glendronach. That's a title. So he was basically her assistant blender, which was awesome. He came back to Victoria. He's a Victoria sort of born guy. Came back to Victoria and helped Driftwood set up the stills, helped with the gin recipes, but also distilled and laid down the first few casks of their whiskey spirit. He then trained the master distiller who's now at Driftwood, an incredible guy called Pablo, who I worked very closely with to create this, and he's now gone on to Wyoming whiskey. So great heritage of the original distiller, but also, I've got to say, Pablo is one heck of a distiller in his own right, and the recipe that we've come up with together for this is wild. So I knew from the get-go we weren't going to be able to make the same spirit. For a start, Ancient Grains, there's no one else making a whiskey quite like Ancient Grains. There is another distillery in BC now making a whiskey spirit called Ancient Grains, but it's nowhere near as good as Devine's. And spiced rum that was aged in a barrel with the spice in the barrel. I don't think there's anywhere else in BC doing that. And there's definitely, as far as I'm aware, no one else in BC who does that and makes a whiskey. So we were never going to be able to recreate the actual recipe and the actual spirit. And we didn't want to. What we wanted to do was carry on the name, carry on the legacy and the project, and go back to the original concept of just wanting this big, baking spice forward, bold whiskey that would work with cocktails, and figure out another path towards it. And that's what we did with Driftwood. And we wanted to work with Driftwood for a myriad of reasons, but one of them is we wanted to do something unique and special, and I knew how good the spirit was at Driftwood after having trying it with Brennan several years prior. So when I went back and managed to do a tour with a couple of members of staff with Pablo and try some of the whiskey that were now coming up to 3 years old, I was blown away by the quality, and I was suddenly flooded with ideas of what we could do to try and make that into a spirit of the deep. And the first thought that came into my head was Driftwood makes a barrel-aged Nocino, which is a green walnut liqueur of Italian origins. And it's awesome. And it's this big, heavy baking spice and big on the sort of clove, cardamom, cinnamon kind of flavors. And I thought that would be the perfect alternative to a spiced rum cask. And then I found out that that was absolutely not going to happen because their Nocino is Solera vatted. So there's never an empty cask. The cask just keeps getting taken out of and topped up again. So there was no ex Nocino cask to be used. And I didn't know what to do at that point. And then I remembered, we're in Canada. And I love being in Canada, especially from a whiskey perspective, but I mean, for many reasons. But yeah, it's great being Canadian. But from a whiskey perspective, it gives us certain freedoms of things that are traditionally done in Canada that aren't done elsewhere. And one of those things is the 1/11th rule. And if you haven't come across that, and especially if you're not Canadian, it might sound really weird, but its roots are very much strongly integrated with how Canadian whiskey is different from other styles of whiskey, especially American whiskey. And that is that Canadian whiskey is not done as a mash bill traditionally. So in American whiskey, they'll use corn, rye, wheat, barley, whatever else they want to put in, and they'll blend them. They'll put all the grains together. They'll make a beer, sort of style of mash, and then they'll distill that, and then they'll age it, and then they've got a whiskey. And if the original mash was 51% corn or more, it could be called a bourbon. If it was 51% rye or more, it could be called a rye. If it was 51% wheat or more, it could be called a wheat whiskey. With the Canadian style, you distill them separately. So you make 100% or close to 100% corn whiskey, close to 100% rye whiskey, and then a wheat whiskey, and then a barley whiskey, and then you age them separately, and you don't blend them until the end. And the corn whiskey is known as the base, and then the other ones are called the flavorings. So you get yourself a good quality corn whiskey, and then you add some rye whiskey to that as the blend to make Canadian rye. And there's often not that much rye in Canadian rye. Sometimes there's not even any. To be called a Canadian rye in Canada, the whiskey rules just simply say it has to have the characteristics of a rye whiskey, which I would say this kind of does in the baking spice profile, so maybe we should call this a rye, even though there's absolutely zero rye in it. We could. We're not going to, because it's a single malt whiskey. So taking that corn whiskey and then adding another flavouring, they also allowed that flavouring up to 1/11th of it could be a different spirit. So you could add a little bit of bourbon, for example, or a little bit of scotch. Or if you really wanted to get crazy, like the guys at Bareface have done, you could add mezcal, for example. Or you could add brandy, which is something that Canadian Club does with some of their limited editions. The Canadian Club 42, 43, 44, they all had brandy added to their 44-year-old corn whiskey, and that's how it worked, which is a really cool way of adding a little bit of extra flavour to their style of whiskey. And some whiskey purists think that's really weird, but the proof is in the pudding, and they can be absolutely delicious. And it really does allow for some really cool expressions. And it's not like you can just throw anything in there. You can't just, throw a whole ton of gummy bears in there, and it's less than 1/11th gummy bear, it's still a whiskey. No, it has to be an aged spirit or a fortified wine. So you could use sherry, brandy. Sherry, brandy is a spirit. Use sherry, port, those kind of things as well if you wanted to. And it kind of lets you skip the whole sherry cask thing. So if you're finding sherry casks are hard to get because they're very expensive, you could just add some sherry right in there. And some of the greatest Canadian whiskies in the past that have done that include things like the Alberta Premium Dark Horse, which is beautiful. And there's some modern ones that do that as well. So we added not a full 1/11th, because that would be far too powerful, but we added just a couple of percent of cask strength barrel aged Nocino to this single malt whiskey. So we took a 3-year-old single malt whiskey, some of the first whiskey that Driftwood ever produced, that was distilled by Brendan, that was matured in an ex-bourbon cask, so really good, high quality. It had aged enough that all of the the notes that you want to get out, the subtractive maturation had done its job, but maybe the additive maturation could use more time. But instead of more time for the additive maturation, we simply used it as a base whiskey in the Canadian tradition and added some flavoring via the Nishino, and it really worked. However, we also wanted to add a bit of a Canadian local hit to it as well. So what we did is we took that Nishino infused single malt whiskey, and we let it marry together in a cask for a while longer. And that cask is particularly special to people from Victoria because it's a cask that used to contain an imperial stout called Singularity, an annual release from Driftwood which has legions of fans. And what that did is it not only allowed that the baking spice flavors to infuse and impregnate the whiskey really nicely, but it also added some flavors of its own, specifically a lot of coffee, vanilla, chocolate flavors. And that created this. And yeah, I love this. Hopefully the light picks up that it's a silver foil for the artwork there. This label was a bit of a labor of love. It worked out really nicely in the end. And we also decided this time to release it at cask strength because it works at cask strength. It works really well. It's stunning. It's not bad at a lower ABV, but it's so good at cask strength, we wanted to give people the option of enjoying it that way, and we frankly wanted the bartenders to have the option of experimenting with it that way, right? And I think that's an important thing to remember. This was designed specifically for mixing, but because I knew I wanted to drink it on its own, it's still good as a solo project. So yeah, huge thank you to everyone at Driftwood who had a hand in putting this together. It was a massive team effort, and a huge thank you to everyone at Fathom. Kirk and the team at Fathom have been excellent to work with, and I'm really, really proud of this second evolution of the Spirit of the Deep project. Oh yeah. First ever bottle of this I've ever opened. Certainly won't be the last. All right. Beautiful. So, on the nose today, what am I finding? I'm finding clove-studded orange peel that's been left to dry. I'm finding that little hint of, what do you call that? Bergamot from Earl Grey tea. I'm finding a little bit of a tannic coffee. I'm finding just this wonderful, tiny little hint of sort of an oiliness, not like kind of like an omega-3 fish oil, because it's not fishy, but that kind of like natural oil, not maybe olive oil? Yeah, it's a little nutty. It might be olive oil, actually. It's very neat. It's not designed to be specifically balanced because it's designed to have sweetness and citrus added to it, right? So we didn't necessarily want the sweetness and citrus there in the first place because it's going to have that added. But that being said, there is still some fruitiness coming through here. Figs, raisins. It's not particularly bright whiskey, especially on the nose, but you wouldn't expect a Spirit of the Deep to be a bright, vibrant whiskey now, would you? Banana, clove, ginger, coffee. Actually, ginger's not something I've really picked up on this before. But today I'm definitely finding it. That's really nice. There's this almost medicinal, not in an iodine, not in a Lafroig Isla way, but in a, I guess, Buckley's kind of a way. There's a slight sort of medicinal note in there that feels like a really good herbal remedy. And it does have this wonderful, the dark baking spice, you know, little touch of anise, little touch of dark chocolate. But throughout all that, it has this little wave of like a sour fruit, like a What is that? Maybe a tart apple. There's like thinly sliced tart apple hidden underneath all of the dried fruit and nuts and baking spice. It's a really interesting ingredient, and I'm really interested to see what kind of incredible cocktails the team at Fathom's going to come up with this. I'm already salivating at the idea of an old-fashioned with this, which is, good because it's designed literally to do that. And I'm happy to tell you that if you are also really intrigued to see what the team at Fathom are going to do with this, I have the perfect opportunity for you to try several different cocktails that are going to be created. So we are launching this brand new edition of the Spirit of the Deep, the first ever Driftwood whiskey, which is... It feels strange, but it's a wonderful honor that we have the honor of launching the first whiskey from Driftwood. And if this is a sign of things to come, it's looking good. And I've tasted some of the samples of what they're planning to put out as their first official, in-house whiskey, without the weird Nicino thing going on. And it's pretty cool. But you can actually come and try this on September the 7th at Fathom. So at 5 p.m. at September the 7th, we are having a launch party. And tickets are available for that right now at strathliquor.com. And it's $25 all in for that. And of that $25, half of it is actually going to be a donation to the Victoria Whisky Festival, which, as I'm sure you know, is a fully for charity volunteer-run festival. So we're going to be helping out, give a little infusion of cash to those guys because they deserve it. And for that $25, you not only get to try a dram of the Spirit of the Deep, you also get a welcome cocktail created by the incredible team at Fathom, but also there's a suite of cocktails being poured that are available for purchase for, I believe, a small amount. It's like $7 or $8 or something as a special for the launch party by not only Soren Chapovsky, who's the lead cocktail designer for Fathom, but also we've got a guest bartender, Joe Casson, coming in, who has worked at some incredible places around the world in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, even with some Michelin star restaurants. So they're going to be creating some wonderful experiences for us. And there's also going to be pass-around appetizers. The menu is available on the ticket page on our website. If you like the idea of a surf and turf oyster, then it's going to be the event for you. There's also going to be some live DJ music as well. And I'm going to be there pouring this as well. So if you have any questions about this whiskey and how it came to be, I'll be there. I believe the team from Driftwood will be there, but not in official capacity. They will be drinking. I'm sure they'll answer questions. But maybe we can get Pablo to sign some bottles as well. Speaking of bottles, as we did with the last one, we have a small amount available to purchase at retail. And it is a really small amount because... it turns out that Fathom's going through a lot of Spirit of the Deep right now. Their cocktail program is very, very popular. So I was originally going to have double the amount, but we need to make sure that Fathom doesn't run out. So it's even rarer. So if you go to strathliquor.com right now, there are 24 bottles of this available at retail, and that is it for this first ever batch. 24 bottles. And you can pick it up right now on pre-order. Regular price is $78.17, which means with your 5% off Whiskey Folk discount, it's $74.27. $74.27 for one of 24 first ever Driftwood whiskies and the second edition of Spirit of the Deep. That is a really cool thing to have, and I hope that I hope that you watching right now get the opportunity to get it. It might already be sold out, but please you go to strathliquor.com and take a look. If you go to the Whiskey Folk page, it'll be listed there. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Soren does with this one. It's such a bigger, bolder edition. Like, this is a beautiful whiskey spirit, don't get me wrong, but this is an actual whiskey. It's 3 years old. It's a full single malt with a Canadian twist. It's big, it's bold, it's cast strength, and yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And if the name Soren rings a bell, if you're familiar with the Victoria cocktail scene, you might remember Soren from Wincry's Mary and Clark and Co. So if you've been to those places back in the day, you'll know the quality of cocktails that are coming your way at this launch party. So again, launch party, $25 all in for the ticket. Half of that goes to charity. It's going to be an absolutely incredible event, 5 p.m. on September 7th. Tickets are limited and available right now at strathliquor.com/whiskeyfolk. I can't wait to get this out in front of everyone and see everyone's opinion. Sláinte, I'll see you at the next one.
Find your way home.